for secondary stroke prevention are right for you.
More than 116 million people in the U.S. have high blood pressure, and fewer than half have it under control, putting them at increased stroke risk. Nothing causes more strokes than uncontrolled high blood pressure. Learn more at strokeassociation.org/stroke month.
The proportion of school-age children who are overweight has finally stopped climbing in the last few years. But experts say in one major way, the problem is still getting worse. The proportion of adolescents who suffer from severe obesity and are roughly 100 pounds or more above their ideal weight has doubled in the last 15 years to about 10%, and that's still going up. Those teenagers, 3 million or more of them, face a myriad of health problems in spite of their youth.
Typically type 2 diabetes, in many cases sleep apnea, in many cases high blood pressure, and even conditions that females get such as polycystic ovarian syndrome are linked to obesity and are greatly improved or remedied entirely by substantial weight loss.
However, for most of them, substantial weight loss won't come easily. That's why bariatric surgery is starting to be accepted for teenagers. However, it can be a hard sell. Dr. Thomas Inge is Chief of Pediatric Surgery at Children's Hospital, Colorado, and Professor of Surgery at the University of Colorado, Denver.
Most people, when we're thinking about offering surgery to a teenager, are quite conservatively minded, and so there's this hope springs eternal type of attitude that this little girl is just going to outgrow this weight problem. She's going to get taller and she's going to get thinner with time, or this one is going to be very responsive to the next diet fad that's, being reported in the New York Times on the bestseller list.
People still think it's as simple as just reducing calories and increasing exercise, and that will solve all of obesity. And what we do know is that that's not the case. Especially for these patients that have severe obesity, they often need multiple treatment modalities, behavior, medication, surgery, a combination thereof to treat their obesity.
That's Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford, an obesity medicine physician at Massachusetts General Hospital and the Harvard Medical School. She says relatively few centers do bariatric surgery on adolescents. While more than 200,000 American adults will have weight loss surgery this year, only a few thousand of them will be teens. But for those who get surgery, it works.
What we see is a weight loss pattern that is practically identical to what you would expect with adults. So many people worry that they're going to, for instance, sabotage themselves by going back to habits that are not healthy. And that just doesn't seem to be the case when we look at the individuals that undergo surgery as teenagers and become adults roughly 8 to 10 years later have maintained that weight loss just as adults would. So really, the findings of the long-term studies that we've done really debunk that concern that teenagers will lose 100 pounds and then regain it all back.
Often, younger patients also haven't yet developed some of the chronic diseases that eventually come with extra weight, such as diabetes and high blood pressure. And Inge says those who have developed those diseases seem to respond better to surgery.
Our suspicion was that if we operated on patients that, say, have type 2 diabetes and severe obesity as teenagers, that they would, in fact, have a better outcome of the surgery on their diabetes than if they were adults. And that seems to be true. And the studies that we've done that have looked at diabetes, that have looked at high blood pressure, that have looked at high cholesterol, what we see is a response of these diseases associated with obesity that is in excess of what we would have expected based on similar operations done in adults.
However, one unfortunate factor is very different between the average adult patient and the average teen patient. By the time they have surgery, adolescents are usually much heavier than the typical adult.
The average BMI for our patients that are adolescent age range that undergo surgery is about 54. whereas the average BMI for our adult patients that undergo surgery is about 44. So you can see that we're waiting longer. The obesity is much more severe in our pediatric patients who undergo surgery.
Stanford says that's where weight loss surgery shows its limits, despite its well-deserved reputation for prompting significant weight loss. Usually, patients will lose 50 to 60% of their excess weight, depending on the procedure. So the heavier a patient is to start, the less likely they are to reach normal.
One of the risks that I'm increasingly telling people about is the risk of doing nothing after a certain point of weight gain. Even with surgery, we cannot reverse severe obesity. And that's a sobering message on the one hand, and it's a call to action on the other hand. I think that as patients are gaining massive amounts of weight, and I'm talking about patients that are in the 350, 400 pound, and even higher ranges, we, even with the best of surgery and the most successful operations that we can do, we can't get them back to a weight that is in a healthy range.
So it may be that weight loss surgery has to be considered sooner rather than later. But how far can we take that? Psychologist Dr. Meg Zeller is professor of pediatrics at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center.
I agree that it suggests that teens should be referred earlier to surgery in their weight gain. I don't think that says necessarily when they're younger than 13. The average age of an adolescent patient is roughly 17. So what we know most about are kids who are older adolescents. So I feel until we know more about the younger adolescents, we should be careful about talking about younger patients.
So while Zeller says age 13 is the floor she's comfortable with for now, many experts haven't settled on how young is too young.
Across the globe, we've seen the boundaries challenged for age, and we've seen things that seem almost incredible to believe done in kids that are really quite young, toddlers, if you will. These operations do have consequences, and we don't understand quite all of the consequences yet, and we've